This is the Black TV Show podcast hosted by Miriam Temeskin. Welcome back to the show. This is episode 72, The Cosby Show Season 3, episode 24, Planning Parenthood. We're only one more episode away from the series finale, why do I always say season? It's season finale of season 3. So this episode aired April 30th, 1987. The synopsis is Cliff treats Rudy and her friends to lunch at an expensive restaurant. We start off with in the living room where Kenny is walking back and forth, waiting for the girls to come down. They're all dressed up because they are all going to a fancy restaurant. So the girls come down and they say to each other basically, "Oh, you guys are beautiful, you look handsome," all that stuff. And so then Cliff comes down and tells the kids that he is taking them to the finest culinary experience that they're in their very short life. Which, I remember going to this one specific restaurant when I was a kid. I probably didn't like half the food that they had there because, all I wanted was like chicken fingers and fries. That's all that will make me happy. Even to this day, I think as a grown-up, if there's chicken fingers and fries, I'm happy. But when you go to these fancy restaurants, they're not great. But we'll continue on later on when they get to that part of the episode. Cliff tells the kids that they have to behave because, this is a fancy restaurant. We can't act like heathens. No mad dog when the bread comes, and they can't be loud. So they're like, no mad dogs when the bread comes. Because at first they were like shouting, but then they become quieter. They all leave. And so we cut to the kitchen where Theo's listening to music, eating a sandwich, and having some milk, it looks like. And Vanessa comes and interrupts him, and he's like, I'm trying to enjoy my Saturday here. And she says, I need a huge favor. I need you to teach me tennis because she met a new guy that plays tennis, and he is the guy, I guess the love of her life. But we never ever meet this guy ever in this series, but so clearly they're not together. But Vanessa doesn't know how to play tennis, and she knows that Theo is good, so she needs his help. And Theo's like, okay, fine, I'll help. And so Vanessa asked if he can make her a good tennis player in one day. And he's like, yeah, I could do that. So we cut to the fancy restaurant, which is called Port-au-Prince Restaurant. I wonder if there's an actual name that's somewhere in the world. That'd be cool, because then they could take from this episode certain things. The burgers that we get to see, they should do that. And so they're all waiting to get seated, and Kenny asks Cliff if he can have a man-to-man talk. And Kenny wants to pay for, so they move to the side. It seems like closer to the kitchen side of the restaurant, and Kenny wants to pay for him and Rudy's meal because he's been told that men should always pay for women's plate. I wish that is the case, man. I know I am a feminist. I don't need to depend on a man, but it would be great if a man just whines and dine you and not expect you to pay half, okay? So I know that men always say, if you're a feminist, then you should pay half. But no, sometimes we don't, okay? Guess how much Kenny has? He has a whopping $1 and a few pennies. What can you pay for at a fancy restaurant? When you go to these gourmet restaurants, you're paying up to $40-50 for a meal. $1 and a few pennies? What? Kenny, don't even offer to pay, But anyways, Cliff asks for the money now, and he's like, no, I want to pay it when so that Rudy could see me pay it. He's like, okay, fine. And so then their table is ready. And they start walking. All of a sudden, some waiter takes a dessert into the kitchen, and all the kids start running towards the dessert. They're like, we want the dessert now, And Cliff says, no, stop acting like children, basically, in a way. That's how he didn't say that, but that's how he says, no, we gotta sit down and eat our meal and all that stuff. And so Kenny tries to open the chair for Rudy, like a gentleman, but it didn't go so well because when he tries to push the chair, Rudy's face just goes down to the table, so she has to do it herself. And so Beth, who is the white girl, I'm sorry, I am stereotyping in this episode because there is a diverse cast today for this episode, so for me it's easier to identify each person, which we will see Beth in another episode, I believe, in either in season 4. So Beth asks, why is there so many forks? I questioned that too when I first got to these fancy restaurants. Like I've gone to a lot of events where like they serve you and all that stuff, a bunch of courses. I tend to just use one spoon and one fork for everything. It's easier. Like why do I need this many forks and spoons and all that stuff? And so Cliff explains this because for all of the courses, you needed one fork for one course, another fork for another course. And so the kids start trading forks and plates because they were like, I don't want this spoon, I don't want this fork. And then Cliff was like, stop, we're not trading forks and plates and all that stuff. And so the waiter comes and brings the bread, and they all act like mad dogs, even though they said that they weren't going to act like mad dogs when the bread comes, okay? And so they're all so excited, and the waiter was like, oh, do you not feed your children? And he's like, Cliff was like, no, I do feed them, So we cut to the house living room where Claire is working. Like, it seems like whenever the kids are not around, she just works. Clearly, she really loves what she does for a living. But her sister Sarah that we met in season 2 episode, I don't know the number of the episode, but it was Claire's sister. She is back for this episode, and she came over and she wanted to drop by, but she also has friends with her. And Claire was like, yeah, more the merrier to have everyone come in. And they were like, oh, we wanted a place to stay and eat. And Claire was like, okay, I'll make something for you. And they're like, no need. We brought our own lunches. They literally just needed a place to eat. That's basically what they were saying. And so they all go to the kitchen to start eating their food. And they start talking about, I think it's called is it the community center? I can't remember, but it's like a gym that they go to exercise, basically. And Samantha, who is played by Pam Grier. If you guys don't know her, she is Foxy Brown, okay? The Foxy Brown. So you gotta always give her praise. But she plays racquetball with this guy. And she's really good. She's been 3-1, basically, so she's won 3 games out of 4. And they just start laughing, like these macho men trying to prove themselves that they're better than women, and he keeps playing even though he keeps losing, and like the men cheer when he wins, the women cheer when Samantha wins. So it's they're just talking about how crazy men get when it comes to these competition games, basically. But we cut to the restaurant and the kids are questioning the menu. There's they don't like the food options. There's a duck dish, and they're like, oh, that's gross. We have to see duck face. We gotta eat the duck face and all that stuff. I'm with you guys, kids. I hate the only meat that I would eat is chicken. I'm basically a vegetarian, but plus chicken. And I know there's a better terminology for someone that eats chicken. I just can't think of it at this moment. So they're like, no, you guys don't need to order that. And so the waiter tells Cliff, so the waiter comes in and tells Cliff, you are a brave man to have all these children at a fancy restaurant, because Rudy explains that they are there because Cliff wanted to take her and her friends out, and that's why the waiter was like, you're a brave man. And so Kenny says, I know what to order. So Cliff was like, hit it. And so he's like, I want an appetizer, soup, and then a salad, and then a main course. And so the waiter was like, okay, there's some chicken. And they're like, no, we want burgers and french fries. That's what the kids all say. And Cliff was like, that's not in the menu. Like, you can't order that. And the waiter was like, no, it's okay. We have it. Don't worry, we have it. And so you guys all want burgers and french fries? And Cliff was like, yeah, everyone in the table will get some. So we finish Act 1 and we go into Act 2. And everyone at the table at this fancy restaurant has salads, but the salads don't look great. They're not your basic lettuce and tomato salads. There's, there are croutons, there are artichoke, I can't even say artichoke heart. I forgot. Artichoke, a vegetable heart, basically, because that's how Cliff explains it. I don't know why I can't say it. There is olives. There are beets. The beets, I don't like beets, so I'm with you with Beth. Like, I don't want beets. So yeah, it's not a regular salad, okay? It's not the tomato and lettuce one that you know. The thing is, like, when I go to fancy restaurants, or if I've gone to like galas and where it's like course, usually salads are the part that I hate, unless they're Caesar salad, because sometimes they do get Caesar salad in, which is great because I enjoy it. Sometimes I eat my other friends' Caesar salad if they don't want it. But most of these places that I'm just like, I'm like, how are you gonna get people to like your salads when they're just so different and unique? I don't know. I'm basic. I'm as basic as these children right here. Okay. So Beth says that she can't have beets, but there are beets in the salad. And it's on her list that she can't have beets because it's gonna I think it makes her face swell up. I believe that's what she said. And so Cliff was like, oh, I didn't know you had a list, basically. Because usually, I guess these kids just have lists from their parents of what they can or cannot eat, clearly. But she just didn't show it to Cliff. Then Morgan says she can't eat olives, but she's been eating them all along. What? So, like, is she allergic or is she just doesn't like them? Because there's two different things. Because with Beth, at least she said that, like, her face, I think, swells up, or something in her body swells up. But with Morgan, she's been eating it, so clearly there should be a reaction if she's allergic to it. But she hasn't reacted, so clearly she is fine. And then I was gonna say Dion, but Kenny. He says I can't eat sawdust. And at first I was like, what is he talking about, sawdust in salad? And he was talking about the croutons. And so Cliff had to explain to him that the croutons are like they're bread, but they're just cut into, they're toasted and they're cut into small pieces. And so Cliff was like, okay, Beth, take out all the beets and put them on this little, because usually there's a little plate that, when you're at these fancy restaurants, there's more plates than you need. So he basically tells Beth, put the beets on the table, on the plate, and then for Morgan, put the rest of the olives on the plate, and make sure if she doesn't feel good, to talk to Cliff. Good thing he's a doctor. Because this would have been, if Morgan was really allergic to olives, this would have been a bad reaction. And then Kenny puts the croutons onto the plate, which he says he pronounced it wrong, and I can't remember how he pronounced it, but it was just funny. He couldn't say croutons, and then Cliff just copied what he said, so it was funny. So we go back to the house where Claire and her friends are chatting. And Vanessa and Theo come home from tennis practice. So Vanessa talks about what happened. So Theo gave her a lesson until two good-looking girls asked to play doubles. That was the end of her lesson. And so then Claire and her friends were like, oh. And like they were like, oh. And then eventually they start laughing. And so Vanessa didn't get to play much, and Theo went swinging all the balls and he hit all the balls that were coming their way. So she didn't play nothing, basically. She's just chilling there. And she was so basically Vanessa's saying that he was trying to impress these girls. And halfway through the match, Theo called timeout and said it was hot out there, so he took off his shirt and did some stretching exercise. All the ladies start laughing. They're like, you know, proving their point about men being, you know, I don't know how to, what was their point? Being men that think that they're macho and they're better than women. Basically, that's what they're doing. And try to impress women. And so Vanessa says she's going upstairs to take a shower. And the ladies are still laughing at Theo. And Theo says, you know, it was hot out there. And they start laughing again. And he said he had to let his skin breathe. And they keep laughing bigger. You hear Claire. She's just laughing. She couldn't stop. I feel like this was probably the most genuine laugh, though. Because, like, I know when you're working on these sitcoms, it's a little hard to... sometimes you have to be serious. But then everyone around you is laughing and stuff. But with this kind of scene, I feel like they really... like, this probably was only one take because all they had to do was laugh, you know? It probably was Theo that... Because, you know, Malcolm is notorious to be the one that breaks during the scenes. That's according to the 2002 The Cosby Show look back. So it would have just been on him that if they messed up on the scene. But for the women, they were just being their genuine self. I feel like they were not even acting. They were just being themselves, basically. And then he also says he was about to faint, and Claire was like, I bet you were. He decides to excuse himself and go upstairs to his room. So we're back at the restaurant, and it's taking a long time for the burgers because they don't usually make these burgers at the Port-au-Prince restaurants. This is a fancy restaurant. They're not known for their burgers. They're known for their fine culinary, I don't know, meals. I have no idea. But we don't know what kind of restaurant this is. But it's a fancy restaurant. Beth asks if there's a playground back there, and he was like, no, there isn't. They're thinking like it's McDonald's. Okay, if that was the case, they should have gone to McDonald's if if they wanted a playground. And so Cliff said no. All the kids go under the table because someone dropped their fork, and so they were going to help. I think it was Rudy that dropped it, and so they were going to help her. And at that same time, the waiter brings all the burgers, and the kids come up, and they look at their burgers, and they don't look good. They don't look like normal burgers that you would get from Circus Burger. I would, when I looked at them, I'm like, I wouldn't have them myself, but like if they're, because I don't eat regular burgers, so if that's just a regular burger, I can't have it. But if it was a chicken burger like that, I think I would still eat it. I would have no issue. But as a child, I would not want that. And the French fries were thick, which I've had that before. Like, my mom has made thick fries and all that stuff. But, these kids are just piggy. Like, this is why you don't bring kids to fancy restaurants. Okay, I remember going to this fancy restaurant. The only thing I enjoyed about it was that it revolved. Basically, we were moving. Within an hour, we did a full 360 around a building. So it was a moving restaurant. But, like, the food itself, I was just not into it. It was too fancy for my taste, okay? And so this episode is a lesson that you do not take kids to fancy restaurants. Just take them to Circus Burger or McDonald's or Burger King, whatever, all these fast food restaurants. Eventually once they start growing up, then you take them slowly to... There should be levels to these restaurants where, from McDonald's to, the Olive Garden to an actual fancy restaurant, And so they point out that, this is not a normal burger, no normal bun, and the fries are big. And Cliff goes to the waiter and has a private conversation and says if he can fix up the dish. And he was like, yes, I will. And basically the way that they talked about it, they're talking about, like, having, like, the burger and fries look like what they look like at Circus Burger. Because later on when Cliff comes home, first of all, he has 2 balloons on his head. Apparently those are his antennas. And he gave Rudy away, but we find out he dropped Rudy at Beth's house. And we find out that the burgers that they ate at Port-au-Prince were actually from a Circus Burger because the waiter went across the street to get them. And that's where they got the balloons for his antenna that he has right now. Cliff explains what happened to Claire about the whole the burgers were too big and everything. So the waiter bought the burgers from Circus Burger and brought it to the restaurant, and they ate them. And Cliff is holding a bag. First of all, apparently this bag is supposed to be holding 4 burgers and some fries. This is a small bag, not good on the props department of this episode, because if we saw the burgers in person, they were huge. And so this bag was everything on top of each other. Like, we know the fries were on top of all of them, but it's just like 4 burgers in such a small bag that I would expect a bigger bag. And so he brought them over in his mind for himself, but he tells Claire he brought it for the kids. And Claire was like, no, you not. You were gonna eat this all by yourself. And Cliff says, no, I wasn't going to do that. And Theo comes down and Claire gives Theo the burger. And Theo's like, yeah, this looks so good. And by the way, Claire calls this disgusting because it's like burgers on top of fries, on top of ketchup, mustard, and all these other stuff is part of the burger and fries, but they're all mashed together. But Theo says, oh, looks amazing. And so he runs into the kitchen, and Cliff tries to follow him, and Claire stops Cliff from going into the kitchen. And so Cliff makes an excuse that he wants to take a nap. So Claire was like, okay, I'll leave and I'll make sure none of the kids bother you. And so he lays down until Claire leaves, and he goes in the kitchen, and we see Theo has just the bag wide open and nothing else there. And Cliff was like, do you love me? And he's like, yeah, I love you, And can you give me one of those burgers? And Theo was like, I can't. And Cliff was like, don't worry, your mom is upstairs. She won't know. And he's like, that's not the reason. I finished them all. And it's only been like 40 seconds, according to Cliff. He was like, you ate 4 burgers in 40 seconds and ate all the fries? And Theo was like, I was hungry. I was like, that to me is ridiculous. I eat these burgers and fries from a restaurant called New Burger in the city I live in. And it takes me, I feel like, to eat the whole meal, it takes me an hour and a half usually. That's how slow of a, well, usually like the burger, I'm probably pretty quick. I finish the burger within, 30 minutes, but then the fries just, I take my time. You want to savor it. So for him to finish 4 burgers and fries, we end the episode with you burping because clearly the food was good, and Cliff is just so mad because he wanted one of the burgers, but he could have them. So we had a whole lot of guest stars for this episode. So we start off with Lee Weaver. He was the waiter. He's worked with Cliff, or I'm sorry, I was gonna say Cliff. He works with Bill Cosby quite a few times, actually. He was in I Spy, which is the show that Bill Cosby was in, and also the Bill Cosby Show, the show that was before the Cosby Show. He was also in Julia, Cleopatra Jones, Sanford and Son, Good Times, The Jefferson, Different Strokes, What's Happening Now, 227, Webster, Amen, A Different World, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Living Single, Sister, Martin, The Jamie Foxx Show, How Stella Got Her Groove Back, My Wife and Kids, The Parkers, That's So Raven, and he comes back for another episode in The Cosby Show, but as a different character, which I don't like. Clearly Cosby Show is notorious for doing this. I don't like it, but what can we do? This is the 80s. Things have changed now. We have enough actresses and actors out there that can do small parts. We don't need them to repeat characters. Then we had Yvette Irwin, who plays Sarah, who is Claire's sister, which we've talked about her in the previous season. We have Eva Gordon, who plays Glenda. She's been in 87 credits. I didn't recognize anything she's done. Patricia L. Robertson as the hostess. This is her only credit, so she was a girl from the hood, basically. As I said, just the one-off episode. We had Dionne Richman, Mimi as Morgan. I don't want to say this in a racist way, but you remember that Rudy had I'm gonna just say Asian boat because I don't want to say specific country, but that she had a friend in season 2 in the Full House episode. Clearly they couldn't get that girl to be in this episode because they chose another Asian friend, because we know from later on that Rudy only had one Asian friend, but they decided they switched them out. So it's kind of weird, but they named this girl Morgan. You know, I was gonna say that's a very white name, but my friends that are Chinese have also white names, so I guess that's fine. This was her only credit. She never did anything, so clearly they couldn't get the other girl. I can't remember what her name was, but they couldn't get the other girl, so they just did a search for an Asian girl. So they got Mimi. And then Penella Pedman as Beth. I can't say her name properly, so I apologize. She'll be back for season 4 for one more episode as the same character. This was the only credit she had, so yet again another girl from the hood of New York City. And then we have Pam Grier. As I said, she was in Foxy Brown. She also was in Roots, The Next Generation, The Sinbad Show, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, The Wayans Brothers, and she's also in the movie Just Right, which I love that movie, and she plays the mother of Queen Latifah, and Felicia Rashad plays the mother of Common. Crazy. So they were in the same movie. I don't think they had any scenes together, but it's crazy when you saw, like when I was watching them sitting together, I'm like, whoa. So they're just chilling here in this episode, and then in Just Right, years later, they're both playing the mothers of the main characters of the movie. Crazy. As usual, Lisa Bonet and Sabrina LaBeouf do not appear in this episode. The lesson for this episode is do not take little kids to fancy restaurants. That's simple. Okay. Question is, do you recall going to a fancy restaurant when you were a child, and how was that experience? And as I said, for me, I didn't like the food there. It was disgusting. And it's nothing against the restaurant. It was just because I was a child. All I wanted was French fries and chicken fingers. That was all I want. That was literally all I would eat at any restaurant. If they didn't have that, I should not be part of that restaurant to basically, or my family would know that I shouldn't be going there. So it wasn't a good experience, but I want to hear from you. Did you actually enjoy the culinary experience of your young life? I want to hear using the hashtag planning parenthood. And use that hashtag at Twitter and Instagram at Black TV Show Pod. And first of all, planning parenthood, I don't know why that was the episode name for this episode. I kind of wish I knew why. And like, why? Why is it called Planning Parenthood? I would love to know why that was the case. Because it wasn't like figuring out, how to get pregnant for a child. Like it seemed very odd. So this could have been a different name, and I can't think of a name like kids going to a fancy restaurant. That seems like too long of a name, but it's crazy that that was the name of the episode. I would love to hear your response. What would a better title for this episode be? Let me know at Twitter and Instagram at Black TV Shows Pod, and I will see you all on the next episode, which is the season finale of season 3. See you all on the next one.